everyone. Welcome to another webinar in the series. Today's topic is AI in cybersecurity. My name is Umang Barman, and I'm really excited about this one because we have a phenomenal guest with us from City of Hope. Mike, welcome to this webinar. We'll get into a lot more details in just a minute. There is a lot of concerns, questions about AI and cybersecurity. So we couldn't think of a better topic to cover today. Just a quick housekeeping for anyone joining now or later. There is going to be a chat/Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. Please feel free to use that to ask questions. We will be taking questions as we get. I have some questions for Mike that I wanted to ask based on some of the early responses, early questions I got. And then we'll get into some of the audience questions right after that. This is going to be an action-packed webinar. We have 27 minutes, so we're already 3 minutes past. I don't want to take any more time. I want to get into it. I know everyone is interested in this topic too. So Mike, welcome. Excited to have you. Would you mind telling the folks just a little bit about yourself before we kick it off with questions?
Thanks, Umang. Happy to be here and share some of my personal observations in this space, which is obviously a very hot topic for us in cybersecurity. So for those of you who I haven't come across professionally, my name is Mike Ruehmkorff. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer at City of Hope Medical System. City of Hope, for those who aren't familiar with it, is a 110-year-old institution that is headquartered in Los Angeles, California. As of 2022, the system acquired Cancer Treatment Centers of America, and so we now have a coast-to-coast presence with 4 inpatient facilities that are located in Los Angeles, Phoenix, Atlanta, and Chicago, and excited to say as well that we'll soon be opening a 5th inpatient facility in Orange County in the LA area as well. City of Hope is a cancer and diabetes research institution. So while we focus on patients, we also have a very heavy focus in the area of cancer and diabetes research. And I am privileged to lead our information security team that services the system nationwide. We have about 35 to 40 professionals on the team, depending on project workloads. And the team is responsible for the typical cybersecurity functions that you all are used to. Security architecture and engineering, identity and access management, incident response, and SOC. We also have a business-facing governance, risk, and compliance function that is responsible for information security policies, assessments, and then business outreach through a small team of business information security officers that help our business units that are involved in technology manage their risk. So a lot to do for us. It's a small but mighty team, and we are all engaged 100% on focusing on the very noble protection of the mission of City of Hope to help patients that have cancer and diabetes.
Yeah, Mike, phenomenal job. And of course, like you said, it's a very noble cause. I fully agree with it. You mentioned a little bit about your team, and you mentioned a little bit about the company. Just for the benefit of the audience, do you mind elaborating a bit on the size and scope of the business you're responsible for protecting? In terms of number of people, number of patients you're serving every year, just so that people know the responsibility you have and what you have to be accountable for.
Sure, yeah. Our total number of employees just eclipsed 14,000 across both our research divisions and our clinical divisions. We do everything from blood bank to NIH-sponsored research to inpatient infusion facilities, you name it, pretty much anything that has to do with the treatment of cancer from diagnosis through resolution. And so lots and lots of medical devices on the network, everything from glucometers to linear accelerators, and everything in between. So the team has a very large scope. And, I think I mentioned our business information security officers. We consider that function to be very critical because for us, our researchers are involved in exceptionally important work. We want them to focus on that work and have their environment, their compute be available to them and not have to worry about the security portion of that. And it should be transparent, similar to our clinicians as well. But City of Hope, across all of our facilities serves, and I may get the number exactly, not exactly right, but about 150,000, I believe, patients in any given year. Checkups all the way to inpatient facilities as well.
Yeah. I mean, that's a broad scope. And I think, as you rightfully pointed out, it's not just a traditional attack surface with employees and applications. It's much more beyond that. With the critical work you're doing, you have responsibility for IP, you have responsibility to protect your IoT and OT devices, your medical devices. So, of course, I can imagine, I can only imagine the challenge and the difficulty sometimes your team might have to face because attackers are relentless. And so, thanks for doing the work that you do, and thanks for serving the community. What I wanted to get into with security was, because you are at the forefront, you're the front lines. How has cybersecurity changed, in your opinion, in the last 18 months? What are you seeing?
Well, I probably don't need to say a whole lot about that because everybody on the call is likely aware of most of the things going on. But to say that cybersecurity is changing is a bit of an understatement. We're paying attention to all of the traditional things we typically pay attention to: vulnerability counts, threat actors, and so forth. And I think, what's become also interesting over the last 18 months in cybersecurity is really that the regulatory environment has come into play and a lot of uncertainty in that space as well. So, for those of us that are in the medical business, we've seen proposals to update HIPAA that represent a sea change and a very impactful change to healthcare. And there's still a lot of negotiation going on there in the regulatory space, and paying a lot of attention to that. At the same time, we've also seen an administration change, and we've seen a lot of impacts with, for example, CISA and the CVE structure being funded for 11 months currently, whereas before that was a certainty to all of us and has been for more than a decade, probably 2 decades. So we're paying a lot of attention to both some of the foundational aspects of how we run security, as well as the changing threat landscape, which is kind of a constant for us. Hard to say those two things in the same sentence, but change is a constant in this business. And we've definitely had some new things to pay attention to injected in how we run our business as security practitioners.
Yeah. Yeah. Switching gears a bit, what I want to talk about is the impact and the opportunity perhaps of AI on security. At least I have seen in my world, AI has already made a significant impact. And it is changing at such a fast clip that I find it extremely hard to keep up with all the challenges or all the changes and ensure that we can take advantage of them far better than anyone else can, because it allows us to do a lot more. Now, of course, it provides different value to different people. If I may, what value do you see it could bring to your team, and how are you thinking about it?
Yeah, I think a couple of things respective to AI. I think number one, it is clearly squarely in the middle of the hype cycle as a technology, and we see great promise in it transitioning into a stable technology. I think the thing for AI is to keep your sights on the outcome that you're trying to achieve through your selective implementations of AI. And for me personally, I see any very large data problem with transactional changes and changes over time as a real opportunity for where we can employ AI. And I'll give a couple of examples of that. Perhaps on a smaller, less time-driven scale are things like identity and access management. And I think most people are probably familiar with the challenges of, say, permissioning access to file shares and SharePoint and other collaborative technologies. And so going through those types of permissions at scale and determining whether access is appropriate or not has always been an exercise that was very challenging for humans to do. And I think, that type of large data set is relevant for AI. In healthcare, role-based access control is a bit of an abstract, a little bit beyond identity and access management, where AI, I think, can play a role as well. Mm-hmm. The other one I look at as a great space for AI is vulnerability management. My experience with vulnerability management has been that the technologies to do detections are pretty mature at this point. The technologies to work through remediation are challenging because they still involve a pretty substantial component of organizational construct. And what I mean by that is effectively addressing vulnerabilities really needs to become a democratized, distributed type process. And so the issue with doing that is when you abstract your vulnerabilities into categories like operating system patching, server configuration, or application remediation, as you do that, the people involved with vulnerability remediation are less and less familiar and experienced with security concepts. And when I think about how to best do this based on the volume and change in vulnerabilities we see, it is really having a capability for a developer or a server administrator that doesn't pay attention to security as part of their day job to ask natural language questions about vulnerabilities to help them prioritize their work, to do the right work at the right time, I think is a real opportunity. When we sometimes send out, for example, large spreadsheets that are categorized by server, by vulnerability, and then filtered by severity, it's easy to not get started in remediating those things because it's a massive list. Whereas if that administrator was able to say, tell me the top 3 things I should be working on to remediate vulnerabilities, that becomes an exercise that is manageable for them within their day-to-day workload. So I see those types of large data sets that are transactional, that change, and also require people to look at the data set and understand how it's changing over time to keep it prioritized. Those things I think AI can really lean in for us and help us distribute this workload to both accelerate vulnerability remediation as well as prioritize it appropriately.
Yeah, well, those are two fantastic use cases, and I'm confident that those are use cases that that will bring immediate value as well, because they're both in both cases, language models are perfect solutions because they may not be good at creativity, or they may not be great at providing original ideas, but they're great at resolving or providing context and simplifying things. And, I think one of the biggest challenges, correct me if I'm wrong, in most organizations is how does security findings get translated to IT in a way that they understand and they can understand and they can absorb and also believe that this is the right level of this is the right problem to resolve. And with language models, you can add this layer of context and knowledge on top that would allow them to understand why should they fix a vulnerability, what is the potential impact, what do they get out of fixing this vulnerability, and why now. Do you face these problems with security and IT, and is this an area you see potentially improving?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the underlying premise of this is you would be hard pressed to find someone in IT that doesn't care about or doesn't want to fix security vulnerabilities. I think the largest organizational problem we have is, again, as we step away from security professionals, we abstract the knowledge of how and what to do to fix these security vulnerabilities. And I think a couple of things come into play with this, and this is my experience. First, you have to pay a lot of attention to the data set that you have underlying your AI technology. I mean, it's really only as good, and it's only going to give correct answers if you have a good inventory, if you have a current vulnerability list and the information is current. In my experience as well, what I would say is when someone goes through and fixes a vulnerability, they want to see the dashboard or the AI model updated right away so that they know it's fixed. And so resolution in the data set is important as well. And I think all of this sort of goes to a foundation of making sure that the platform you use, AI, be it identity and access management, whatever problem you're solving, whatever outcome you're trying to achieve, pay some attention to make sure that the platform and the information you're providing is credible. I have hard-won experience in saying that you don't get probably more than 2 shots with the people that you're trying to influence. If the data isn't credible, they're not going to come back and pay attention to it. And so I think us as security practitioners and professionals taking the time to really do what we expect out of our development teams, go through the business requirements gatherings, the outcomes determinations, and really be very careful to do user acceptance testing and look at model bias and make sure the data is accurate, because if you lose credibility, people won't come back to the table for you and you won't achieve the outcome.
Yeah, makes total sense. The other aspect of AI, which you just highlighted, is the risk that you take. with adopting any AI model. But I think if you pay attention to the news and the news cycles, perhaps the people who are not fully informed about AI see this as a threat, and rightfully so, because they may not, be fully aware of the potential, what it can and cannot do. How do you help your teams see the advantage? How do you help your teams believe that this technology, the adoption of it, is going to help them and not hurt them?
Really two layers to that. I think the first portion of this is to understand that we are looking to AI to do the heavy lifting, but we will still always require people who have the trade craft to make judgments based on what they see. For many security incidents, we and many others look at, we see an incident happen on the dashboard, but the very next step is to phone that user to see what's going on. And AI is unlikely to be able to make those types of judgment calls anytime in the near future. So, what we want AI to do for us is to keep its eyeballs on, sort of the quintessential scrolling of log entries, hundreds per second, that humans can't keep up with. Look at the trending in there and bring the right thing to follow up on to the top of the list. So I think it's important that we structure things in that way so that our security teams and, heck, even our physicians, our nursing staff is aware that we're trying to prioritize the work and take away the grunt heavy lifting portion of it so that they can work at top of license with the expertise they have. I think the other thing too, at a larger scale, Umang, is good governance. With any technology in the hype cycle, like we see with AI today, everyone is looking for a use case. And I think organizations holistically, and this includes information security and risk as a subset of that, really need to understand first, I've touched on it before, what is the outcome that they are trying to achieve, and then how to achieve it. So, you can apply ChatGPT to just about any problem you have in some way or the other. But the question is it achieving the outcome? Have you gauged the risk, and is it the right tool to use? And there's an awful lot of noise in the system right now about AI, and it's important to have that governance structure in place, both within IT and organizationally, to make sure you're solving the right problems with the right tool.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I think I want to, a question that just came in, and I wanted to ask, because it sort of builds on what your question, what your answer was, which is, has your tooling decisions changed with AI yet? And if so, are there any categories that are in, and are there any categories that are out? How are you thinking about that?
We are looking very carefully at tooling decisions, and we find ourselves in a bit of an interesting place at City of Hope. We were fortunate to institute basically a ground up program about 18 months ago. From there, with 3-year agreements in place, generally, we're now in a place where we're looking at what is the next set of tools to accomplish our strategies. And because of some of the successes the team has had, we're actually looking at what outcomes do we want to achieve next. And that's where some of the things I've mentioned are coming into play. So, for example, identity and access management. We're paying attention on a number of fronts related to making tooling decisions. Every single vendor is coming out with AI, almost every single vendor. But at the same time, there are also a lot of very promising startups that are coming out with AI technology as well. And so for us, one of the strategies we're employing is engaging with venture capital groups to help them to work with them and leverage some of the knowledge they have around where they're investing, what technologies they see as worth investing in. That keeps us from having to do the homework on some, I believe it's close to 4,000 vendors offering security products these days, which is a full-time job to keep up with. And, I would say too, the use case for City of Hope is not the use case for other sized organizations. So some of it depends on industry vertical. We may find in, for example, finance, you'd want to be much more conservative about the approach. We may find larger organizations that some of these early funding startups are not able to scale. Whereas smaller organizations, it may be easier for them to take advantage and try out some of these new technologies. So there's a lot to think about in the space of tool selection and with whom you engage and how you engage.
Yeah, for sure. One question I had, as you're thinking about tooling, is also about budget. I know every CISO is that I've talked to has mentioned to me in some capacity that budgets are not growing as fast as they did a few years back. So first of all, just high level in your world and in the worlds of your peer, are budgets growing? Are they stable? Are they reducing? And how are you sort of thinking about monitoring this in conjunction with the AI coming online?
Yeah, we pay some very careful attention to benchmarking our budget against standards. And so we look at the cybersecurity budget against our overall digital budget, which is pretty much the sum total of development and support for all of our systems. The case is particularly relevant for us. Every dollar we spend on cybersecurity is a dollar that potentially doesn't go to cancer or diabetes research. And so part of our mission and objective in the organization is to be very efficient with how we provide our services. So we pay a lot of attention to that. And I think, going back to the statement around how we want to use AI, it is, again, really keeping our practitioners working at top of license and paying attention not to finding the right things, but taking action against the right things. And we want to leverage AI to make sure that they are working down the right list and not having to scroll through pages and pages of things to find the right list. And so from our perspective, that's really a substantial portion of the payback promise of AI, is to keep our team lean and mean and efficient and keep them focused on the right things instead of trying to find the right things.
Yeah. That's I think that's a great approach. I know we are almost at the top of the 30 minutes. I have more questions, but these questions will never end. But I want to be respectful of your time, and I want to be respectful of the time that we promised the attendees. This was obviously a phenomenal conversation. I am excited about the potential of AI. You are excited about the potential of AI, and I'm sure 6 months from now we can have this conversation again, and it will be completely different than what we're having right now because the pace of change is phenomenal. For the audience, if you're interested in learning about how Balbix uses AI for cybersecurity, we obviously have a cybersecurity AI assistant, which we call Bix, that analyzes your data on vulnerabilities, exposures, your threats, your risks, and we provide you with context, with insights, with information to your analysts, to your security operations team, to your CISOs, to be able to understand where the risk is at, to be able to go find where the vulnerabilities and exposures are and get the right instructions to go fix them. If you want to see a demo, call us. We'd love to talk to you. But in the meantime, Mike, thanks again for coming on this webinar, and we really appreciate your time. And thanks again to all the attendees who joined. We'll send you a recording of this webinar, and hopefully we look forward to chatting with you and others soon. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Umang. Happy to share my experience. Happy to connect with anyone on LinkedIn as well if there are questions or collaborations to follow up.
Awesome. Great again. Thanks, Mike. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you all.
Bye.